Who's ready to build a crew labor agreement template with nothing but our do-it-yourself template kit? So I'm going to show you how to create reusable templates for all your various production workers in minutes, ready to serve as a real-time pre-payroll calculation feature within Yamdu Smart Time Cards. So let's roll up our sleeves, because here's another video for all your hardworking people on set and at the production office. And today's topic is how to build reusable labor agreement templates. Alright, welcome. Let's get started. So where do I actually need such templates? Well, you can see it, for example, in the time cards section. There are several calculations that Yamdu does for me for the payable hours, but also here down below, it's calculating meal penalties, or it also warns me if there might be kind of a violation of rest periods. So where does all this come from? It comes from labor agreement templates in the profile. So I can click here and I get access to Robert Jones time tracking and payroll profile, and you can see it right here, labor agreement template, and it's the demo labor agreement template number 1. Another way of accessing this data would be in the crew area. I click on Robert Jones on his profile, and of course I also have access to exactly the same time tracking and payroll section in his profile. There are several ones, like also public templates that are always available, like for Germany, Austria, etc. But I also have access to my company templates. Here I want to go to Yamdu Studios, my company section in this case, and then I go to payroll library, and there I have a section for labor agreement templates. And I see all my templates that I have created here, or that other crew members like Doug Brown have created, and also like are these templates actually in use, so I don't accidentally delete a template that is being used in various projects. All right, I know what you mean, right? What? I can delete a labor agreement template? What happens to all my time cards? No worries, my friends. I will explain how this works. So if you have a payroll labor agreement template, like for example, on a company level, you can use it, like select it within the payroll labor agreement profile of user A, of user B, and of user C, right? But it's like an importing process of that data. So in case you kind of delete this central template, it does not affect existing time cards. There, all the settings still stay in place, right? No worries. And you could even go back to like the profile of such a user, and then again hit, well, save as template, and that's how you again create a centralized payroll labor agreement template in your payroll library, right? So no worries, in case you deleted something accidentally, it does not affect existing time cards and existing crew profiles. All right, I hope that's helpful. Of course, I could use an existing one, duplicate it, but in my case, I want to actually create an entire new template. And let's call this do-it-yourself labor agreement template number 1 and hit create. So first of all, we have to think, what is actually the blueprint of this particular template, right? Is it, for example, labor regulations, like for example, national law and the union and stuff like this? And of course, I could actually choose like a union here. All the options are possible. I will show you in a second. But first, let's see what we have in here in our toolkit. Well, of course, we do have like unions, right? So the union could be the foundation for our agreement template. We could also say, well, no, it's not like union-based. For example, we could select like non-union, because it's just our individual contract, like our agreement that we have prepared for our production workers or specific departments, and that's what we actually want to use. No matter if it's union or non-union, what you always need, of course, is the contracted work time. So the contracted work time is the next obvious building block, no matter if it's union-based or not, right? Because we need to define, like, for example, the base hours per week, and then, regular working days per week. It will give me kind of the base hours per day. And then I could also add guaranteed overtime hours. So there are a lot of options, including like if there are minimum work hours. This is no deep dive on how those settings actually work, because they're other videos and tutorials, and you find all the links below to those various sections, and it explains kind of the background. So of course I have to say that the user has to track work time with this template, and then I have to take care of the regular day. So actually the times of what does a regular day look like, right? So let's put this here. What is the base time, right? That's usually, of course, 1x, and that's at least usually the base hours. So in this case, 8 hours. And then, of course, are there certain overtime categories, like, for example, OT1. By the way, you can always set, like, what are the increments? So usually, for example, it's kind of counted in 15-minute steps, and, the rounding rules. Again, I don't go too deep into all this right now. And then I can say there's also OT2 is a new category, and the user already gets like 2x or 100% more of the hourly rate, and so on and so on. So you have up to 5 overtime categories and buckets for like the regular day. But maybe there are also special days. So in this case, we want to also make some adjustments in the template for special days. So let's see here what we have. So we could say a special day, for example, is a weekend day 1 or weekend day 2. That could be, for example, in European agreements, the Saturday or the Sunday. But you could also choose, like, for example, the 6th or 7th day, kind of a more American system. And then you see you have like more categories to the side. So either for the weekend day 1 or 2, or also here for the 6th or 7th day. Here you can see there's also a thing called like weekly overtime. And you can see Yamdu is, it's quite deep what we can offer here. So weekly overtime settings, they might matter in a lot of European countries, for example, where you can hit certain thresholds, for example, if it's more than 60, 65, 70, whatever hours worked per week, and then another kind of penalty rate is being triggered. Then you can see here we even have options for the so-called time account. So in some countries, like for example in Germany, not everything is kind of like paid out directly each week or each month to a user. It's rather collected throughout, like a feature film, throughout a show, etc., on a so-called time account. And if you enable this, there are actually additional options possible. So whereas a time account might be very special to specific countries on this planet and certain labor agreements, like for example the German union, there is another thing that is not so special at all. And you will know all about, night premiums. So of course you can also set up your night premiums in your templates. There are up to 3 categories, NP1, NP2, NP3. And let's say, for example, NP1, kind of the first section is, let's say, from 10 p.m. In the evening till 2 o'clock, for example, in the morning of the next day. And there we have 1.75x. And then NP2, for example, is already 2.5x. And that's then from 2 o'clock until 6 o'clock on the following day. And then another thing that can make things quite complicated, of course, is a different type of special days, the so-called public holidays, right? Don't we love them, like from a production perspective? So, and you can see here, you can also import public holidays. Here, if I choose the United States, it's in this case all regions. For other areas, there might be even regional differences on the holidays, and you can simply pick and click what for this particular template is considered to be a public holiday when it comes to calculating all the time cards and the payable hours. So in this case, you have, again, up to 5 categories in addition to the base time, what potentially could happen when it comes to like extra payments to overtime on public holidays. So below the public holidays is again something special because you might also allow compensation days. So this is, for example, also related to the time account in some European countries. Let's put this on top here. For example, here, a compensation day when working on weekend day 2, which could be, for example, when forced to work on a Sunday, you owe an additional compensation day. And then we come to the beautiful area of meals. Don't we love meals? So the meals are, of course, very important. And I guess it doesn't matter where on this planet you're shooting, there will be regulations on meal times. So there could be non-deductible breaks. You could set this here like, it's required if you use this like 2 hours after work start, a personal call or whatever, but definitely there will be meal one, right? And you can say there's a minimum duration of 45 minutes and the required meal start time after 6 hours after work start. So meal stop can get quite complicated. And also if there's grace or extension enabled for this particular agreement. The same, of course, for meal two, and there could be even the option for walking meals. Why? In order to avoid potential penalties. But if you have to pay penalties, if they actually occur, you can set here your meal penalties, like for the intervals, like 30-minute intervals, and then what is each meal penalty worth, like $7.50, $10, $12.50, and so on and so on. And even if there are weekly thresholds, for example, more than 20 meal penalties in a week trigger additional penalties. So meals are important, right? Because your crew needs to eat, but your crew also needs to sleep. So let's go down to rest periods. All right, let's put this on here. So with rest periods, of course, you need to set like what's the minimum daily rest period. There could also be a minimum weekly rest period. And if penalties are part of your agreements, you can set up like up to 3 forced call categories, as we call them, taking into account the invaded hours. Like the first 2 invaded hours are kind of twice the hourly rate, etc., etc. But there are also other ways that do not work with invaded hours, rather per occurrence. And there could be settings for subsequent occurrences and so on and so on. All right, so as you can see, this is already getting quite impressive, right? But we're not done, because there's also a thing called kind of rerates or special rates, right? So there could be different things like travel days or prep days or rehearsal days, and you can set up, okay, what's happening then? For example, on a travel day, if this agreement template is being applied, this crew member only gets 50% of the daily rate. And then, of course, there's even more. There are potentially perks, right? So let's put the perks like maybe over here. All right, great. So the perks could be mileage allowances, so the perks could also be per diems, like for meals. And the great thing here is in this template, you can actually build kind of a per diem library, for example. Let's say like if breakfast is excluded, those crew members here get $25 per day. If they have to, buy their own meals, that is, or all meals is $35. We're almost done. And I think this is already quite impressive, right? So if we go into a project now, into a crew list, we can search for a crew member that has not yet like a labor agreement enabled. Let's, for example, go to Laura Skinner. And as you can see here in Laura's profile, I have actually applied all those sections in a second, right? Because I'm using an existing template. So in Laura's profile, there are still a few tiny little things that I can now only do in her own profile. And one of those things is, of course, the salary. And I can set this here, for example, like in an hourly rate or daily rate or weekly rate or monthly rate, and it will calculate the hourly rate and so forth. So the salary is set up in the crew member's profile directly. And a similar thing is if we scroll down here, apart from like the perks and per diems, there's also something called like kit fee or box rental. So that's also something that you usually set up in an individual profile, because maybe here Laura has certain equipment items that she's renting to the production company, and you can set up, is this like for daily or weekly? But again, that is something that is usually not part of a template, because it might be a very individual agreement with a crew member. But still, kind of to have like the complete thing here, we can of course also add like the kit fee and the box rental. And of course, we need to add the salary because all the payments are kind of, filtered by the salary itself. So last but not least, there's only a tiny thing missing here. So down below, you can also set up your account codes, like your chart of account, which is then used later for the actualization in the budget. So let's put this on here as an additional option, so it's just that we see everything together. All right, done. So this is actually my first labor agreement template, and there could be many more. I could just, duplicate this and do like some tweaks, and I have more and more and more, and I just apply them across my projects for my various production workers. Oof. Oh, that was quite exhausting. And also to avoid meal penalties, it's finally time for my walking meal. That's all right. And I also hope you agree that all this gives you quite the flexibility that you've been looking for when it comes to timekeeping. So if you think that's useful, please click like and subscribe. And always remember, she works hard for the money.